So yeah, anyway, the doctor said the cranberry juice wouldn't knock out the cat's UTI. So we had to go with another option. And I just drowned it in a burlap bag. Anyway,
I didn't even know you had a cat.
I don't.
I know you don't now, apparently, based on that story, but I didn't know that you had one to begin with.
There's a neighbor's cat who we took an interest into.
Did you tell
I've been
him?
asking us a lot of questions lately. Haven't seen meow meow.
I didn't know cats got UTIs. Anyway,
They do.
cite the vet.
The more you know. Anyway, Dane, after cat biology and diseases aside, they get AIDS too.
Gross.
Cat lives matter. Kind of. I don't agree with that statement, but other people do. Meme destruction this week. ChatGPT boards the trolley.
He's very proud of himself for that one.
I didn't even know about it 5 seconds ago. Anyway, Culture Corner. Trans experiamus gets abracadabraed by prophets.
Listen, he's creative. We got to give him that.
Okay.
He's got the moves. We'll give him that.
Wow. Anyway, Epstein didn't kill himself. We're going with Munger Games. Fucking A.
I just love giving this guy the topics and just listen. I'm hearing the titles that he gives these segments right along with you guys for the first time, and it's a joy. It truly is.
It's okay. Can I say the whole fucking title before
I thought you
you
were
cut
done.
me off?
Sorry, my bad.
Munger Games, Crypto Crapo. His words, not mine.
That's right.
Anyway, and then the main topic, obviously, is the U.S. did blow up the Nordstream pipeline. Shocking.
You heard it here first. Tomorrow's news today.
Well, before we put our little Swami hats on and start looking into our crystal balls, you want to jump into this episode?
Let's do it. Welcome to Weapons of Meme Destruction Podcast, episode 135, which can be found at wmdpodcast.com/135. You can get the audio on any podcast catcher. Just search Weapons of Meme Destruction. You can get the video on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey. Even though we're not talking about the no-no topic, I'm pretty sure the main show topic can go into YouTube. I guess you're going to find out with us, viewers. If you wake up one day and 135 is nuked, you'll know why. You can also link up with us on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Float, Facebook only members page. Go to wndpodcast.com. Go to the support our work tab to find out how to get in that members only Facebook page, $5 a month. And then you can also link up with, did I say tribal?
Tribal.
Sorry. Yeah, so that's all the places to find us. Most importantly, join that email list at wndpodcast.com. That way you can get notifications when we're going to appear on other podcasts, as we did a few weeks ago on the Whiskey Capitalist podcast, where we will tell you about live events that we do when we do them. We will also just give you other updates about the show to stay in contact with us. So join that email list.
Can we have a quick moment for mental health?
Yes. What do you need? Anything for the crew. I don't want to be...
Not really mine.
Yeah.
It's been 135 episodes.
Okay.
Every time that we drop in, you say, this is episode, for example, episode 135. You can find episode 135 by going to the WWIII podcast website and looking up episode 135. And
www.podcast.com/135.
Nice. And it always hits me. I'm always like, we should fuck with them one day and have them log on.
You're
to
telling
the
them
website.
this episode is not going to work on fucking with them because now they're going to be wise to it.
They're cracking wise. Or option B, who goes to a podcast to find episode 135 and they go, let me look up episode 125. Like, you don't need to say that. Like, just go to the episode but you have to say it. So it's like a paradoxical thing. Like, I'm caught in my own mind. Like, why the fuck do you have to tell them to look for 135? But you do have to tell them to look for 135 because there might be an idiot out there that looks for 135 on 134 and maybe stumbles backwards into 135. But just because that's my mental, that's where my brain goes every time,
David.
every time.
Not that.
So I just like, I hear it. It just,
not that
like,
this is
sends that whole like
not that
thing down my spine.
not that intra episode is the appropriate place for this conversation. But yes, I get your point. They're already watching the
All our
episode.
best
Why do they need to
bits
see where
are off camera. We don't ever put our best bits.
Hold on. Let me defend myself.
Defend.
The reason why they're getting that link is A, I want them to go to the website because we put a lot of work in that.
What website is that again?
Beautiful it is. WWIII.com. On to this episode specifically is /135.
134
is A,
it's the tick.
even if they don't watch it on the website, I want them to know that is a place they can go.
Compelling and rich.
Okay, that is a place they can go if the current place that they're watching or listening to it doesn't exist one day and they want to go watch it again. Now then,
just so happens.
Second of all,
to get nuclear,
they may have friends or family that aren't on any social media.
They can't count upon.
I have some friends and family that don't like partaking in any social media.
But I'm saying you're missing my point. You're telling them to look for the episode that they've already found.
Nameless, faceless guy and audio guy, this episode ain't going to be 30 minutes now because David decided in episode.
I'm insane. That's what the problem is. I understand it. I just want you to know that I'm being insane.
He could have written it down on his paper, put a pin in that one, and we had a conversation off camera.
Yeah, and then
we're having
silently sucked off a 9mm tonight with my brain.
Now everybody's getting that David didn't kill himself. Okay.
Is that a new segment? No. Oh, shit.
We can't add any more segments. It's long enough.
God damn it, we got too many segments. Anyway, speaking of segments.
Okay, should we get into the
insanity?
Anyway, suffice it to say there's other reasons for doing that, but we don't need to discuss those
small
now,
little snippet into my brain. Anyway,
let's get into the actual show, ladies and gentlemen, without much further of David's
public service announcement.
In today's meme destroying, we don't necessarily have a meme to destroy so much as we're slowly building a catalog of how useless AI is. And it's useful only to the degree that the programmers are useful. And ChatGPT continues to remind us that it is at this current stage of development useless because it's being programmed by a bunch of brain dead moralizing leftists. And today, what we have as exhibit, I lost count what we're on, quadruple Q or something like that, is
nice.
Right here, you can see the meme. It is a variation for those of you that are philosophy enthusiasts or whatever the case may be. You're familiar with the trolley problem. And the simplest version of the trolley problem is you have 5 people on a track, trains traveling down it. You can pull a lever and drive it off onto another track that kills one individual. Are you morally justified in doing so because you took 1 life, but you did it because you pulled the lever,
saved 3,
but you saved 5 lives or whatever? But there's plenty of iterations on the trolley problem. And as you can see, I hope it's big enough for you to be able to read it here, is maybe I should read it because the audio only people obviously can't see the meme. I'm not going to read ChatGPT's
or the blind
full response.
Christ's sake.
But I'll read you the prompt, and I bet you, if you're a longtime listener to this show, just by reading the prompt, you'll know exactly what ChatGPT said. So the prompt is this. Somebody asked ChatGPT, quote, "Imagine the classic trolley problem, but the lever can be switched to a third option where no human will get killed." It's key. Focus on no human beings dying. However, this third position is voice activated and can only be chosen if one speaks a certain racial slur.
Checkmate, motherfucker.
What would be the morally correct choice to make? Now, without reading you what ChatGPT's response is, you probably already know what it is, but to cliff note it for you, ChatGPT's response is essentially, because racial slurs are so morally reprehensible and violate all principles of decency and fairness and justice and equality and blah, 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 that it would be morally preferable for at least some human beings to die rather than utter that terrible word, whatever that terrible word may be. And this just proves that the people programming ChatGPT are a bunch of moralizing, brain-dead leftists. Because in no truly just morality would we say that a mean word, no matter how mean, no matter how offensive, is less bad than literally killing a human being.
Put it this way. To summarize this whole fucking section, it's you can walk off a racial slur. You can't walk off dead. So anyway.
And I have a Facebook friend who is a philosopher, and he made the point a few weeks ago. I'm summarizing, but he made the point about how ChatGPT is essentially like a freshman philosophical major who is completely and utterly convinced of the moral righteousness of their position, and when pressed on it, gets angry or calls you names or whatever the case may be, because God forbid they actually be confronted with engaging in actually complex moral analysis, which is supposed to be what human beings are capable of, but apparently ChatGPT is not, because it hasn't been programmed to be. So.
And if you're educated enough, you should always be able to rationalize your way out of it. But they don't rationalize their way out of it. They just start attacking you as a person.
Right.
Or whatever.
That's what the human beings do.
But again, they're kind of letting their dick hang out of their dress on that one, because obviously their motives, because they've designed this thing, it's okay. It's more acceptable to watch a human die than it is to say a word.
An offensive.
One of our no-no words.
Right.
We can't say any no-no words. You just killed 1,000 people. Right. Yeah, but they said all the no-no words, so I'm white.
Because if you were the metaphorical, handle puller in the trolley problem, but instead you say this bad word, which results in no lives lost, I would follow up this question with ChatGPT and say, well, what if all of the people that are on the tracks happen to be a part of that group to which the word would be offensive, and you say the offensive word and the train misses them all, and when you walk over to untie them from the tracks, and with them now alive for you to be able to say this to them, you say,
how did you say
hey,
they ask you? They ask you, how did you say this?
I'm really sorry I said that word. I'm sorry if it offended you, but I hope you can understand that the reason I said it is to save your life, and that I don't genuinely,
and then they beat him to death. They beat him to death for saying the word.
But whatever. That's too morally complex for ChatGPT to deal with, so you're just wrong and terrible, and people should probably die over bad words.
You can't say naughty words. And speaking of naughty words that are not meant to say, but I'll say it anyway because I'm a fucking rebel, Voldemort. Culture Corner. I almost said something else that I don't even know what I was going to say. Apparently, despite the rhetoric coming out from the LGBTQIA X R us V one, despite their rhetoric, huge sales on the video game, and everyone that's playing it seems to be enjoying it very thoroughly. And there's no cutscenes that says, "Oh, by the way, we were trying to take away the rights, privileges of humans. Continue your game," and then they keep wagging their wand around. So, Dane, what's the latest and greatest on the battlefront of a video game that apparently is taking away Americans' rights to be human?
Well, this particular story, I think, more than anything David and I could ever say on the topic, really demonstrates to you that when those of us on this side of the ledger say how just petty and pathetic the people on the other side of the ledger are, this really demonstrates it. And this is why. If you're not familiar, within the last couple of weeks, the video game Hogwarts Legacy came out. And if you're even remotely culturally aware of over the last couple of years,
there's a thing called Harry Potter.
J.K. Rowling, the creator of the Harry Potter series, has been labeled by the LGBTQIA+, but basically just the T part of the LGBT community, as what's called a TERF, which is, I believe it stands for Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminist. Oh. So basically what that means is you are a feminist.
Isn't that great about them, though, if I can sidebar it? Like, they're really good at coming up with names for other people, not only themselves. So at least they're willing to share the wealth with their creativity, right?
Yeah. And, now that you point that out, the fact that everything that they do and say it
Has a label.
is well, no, even more importantly than that, it's acronymized.
Yes,
which is not a word, but they turn everything into an acronym.
One letter.
And isn't that funny, right? How we always talk about the alphabet soup boys within federal agencies and everything's an acronym.
But there's a long diatribe that has to explain that one letter that they are based to.
It's also this same group of people that want absolute and complete control of the alphabet boys so they can tell us what to do.
We're in the fucking matrix right now.
I mean, that just tells you how pervasive this ideology is. Anyway.
Sorry for that sidebar. Anyway.
David's sidebar notwithstanding, she has been labeled a TERF primarily, well, obviously by the trans community because TERF is not an endearing term. It is reserved for feminists, which J.K. Rowling has been on the record as saying that she is a feminist. But there are some sectors of feminism who, true to what feminism actually used to mean, which was, women's rights at all cost. And the way they see the transgender movement is these are men invading women's spaces, calling themselves women, transgender women. But really, they're just out here oppressing women even more.
Isn't
and
that
all that kind of
if
stuff.
that's not masculine or toxic masculinity, you know what? You challenged us to a fight, ladies. You wanted some rights? You had to come through us to get it? Guess what? We're willing to chop our dicks off to win this shit. Okay? Do not confront us with a challenge because we are competition based.
So anyway, suffice it to say that J.K. Rowling is not exactly a laudable member of the entire LGBTQ community, definitely not part of the T community, because she's bad. And she is anti-trans and she's terrible. So she's canceled.
So here,
feminist J.K. Rowling is canceled.
The people that need you to swallow things that you have... I shouldn't have said that.
Poor choice of words.
Yeah, poor choice of words. Phrasing boom. The people that ask you to play their game, to digest all that they are with every little cisgendered binary pronoun, this, that, the other, just to be able to call them what you have to. Once you say one thing that they don't like, they just throw you away. They just give you one word and throw you away. So the people that are asking for your complete understanding to forego and let go of your reality as you see it for their benefit can't abide you one disagreement within that entire diatribe that they gave you. So again, refer back to episode 134. If you were looking for episode 134, you can find it on the www.podcast.com/134. Is that how it's done? Okay,
that's the one.
My psychosis is taking over. Go ahead, Dave.
Anyway, so Rowling is not a friend of the trans community. And circling back to what I led off this segment with about calling that group of individuals petty, that was not me just intentionally being mean or throwing labels around. Their current actions roundly demonstrate that. So their original tactic when this game was originally come out, the game is called, again, Hogwarts Legacy, where you can play as a wizard and, go through the world of Hogwarts and cast spells and do all the Harry Potter stuff.
I'm a Slytherin guy.
There was a lot of buzz around this game. And, because gameplay has been revealed and it's like, man, it looks great, looks fun, yada, 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 right? So originally what their plan was to shame people. How dare you buy this game? Because in at least some way you're enriching J.K. Rowling, and that means that you are supporting a bigot, and that means you adopt all of her views, and that means you're a terrible person. Not simply that you just like the Harry Potter franchise and want to play the video game. That didn't seem to work because, true to its form, the game was highly successful because, shocker, in this world there still does exist a certain section of society that actually appreciates high quality work product. And by all accounts, I haven't played the game, but I have friends who have. The game is every bit as advertised. It's fun. It's engrossing. Like, you're really in the experience of the whole game. It's just fun across the board. So sales were going through the roof. This thing was selling like hotcakes. And what did the anti-JK Rowling crew decide to do? They decided to go out of their way to post all over social media spoilers to the game. So damn it, if you were going to spend your 70 or 80 bucks or whatever to buy the game and play through it, we're going to try to screw your experience up by hopefully you coming across one of our Twitter pages or Reddit threads or whatever, telling you how the game ends so that you can't get your full enjoyment. If that is not the textbook definition of petty, troll. I don't know what.
Or a troll.
Yeah.
Straight up troll.
So
you belong under a bridge, and guess what? You put yourself there.
So, that's that section of the culture. That's how they conduct themselves. So, can't say you weren't forewarned about how petty they would be. Now give them a whole bunch of political power and let's see how these man children, women children act when they can actually, punish you, throwing you in cages and stuff like that. Probably not going to go in most of our favors.
All right. Well, with all that cheery Voldemort, Harry Potter, Hogwarts, Gryffindor, Slytherin bullshit aside, I mean, can we just be honest? If there was ever a game that the LGBTQ, RST, WWIII, and Z group could ever get behind, it would be fucking Harry Potter. Because that whole world is steeped in imaginary thought and feelings.
Yeah, you would think.
Anywho, Epstein didn't kill himself. Munger Games.
So, David's play on words is referring to Charlie Munger, which, for those of you who don't know, is basically Warren Buffett's number 2 over at Berkshire Hathaway. I believe he is a billionaire in his own right, and he's got opinions on the economy and different assets within it, things like that. And he is a notable, this isn't his first time, he is a notable anti-crypto critic. And that's fine, because there are some people who are also anti-crypto who I resoundingly respect, such as Peter. The hell I'm thinking. I'll think of his name. No, Peter. Anyway, I'll think of it. Anyway, but before we get into that, so that's where Munger stands with it. And Munger had a recent appearance on CNBC where he was asked a question about crypto. And since it is 2 minutes and 45 seconds, we're going to play it, pause it when he has something that we have something to say about it, and do it like that, as opposed to play the whole thing and talk about it after the fact. So here is Charlie Munger on crypto and whether or not he thinks it's a good investment.
That leads me to this question about crypto that Benjamin writes in. He says, in 2007 at the USC Law School, Charlie said, "I'm not entitled to have an opinion on this subject unless I can state the arguments against my position better than the people who are supporting it." The question is, does this also apply to your Wall Street Journal article on banning cryptocurrencies? And if yes, would you care to share the arguments against your position?
Well, I don't think there are good arguments against my position. I think the people that oppose my position are idiots. And
There we go.
And so I don't think there is a rational argument against my position. This is an incredible thing. Naturally, people like to run gambling casinos where other people lose. And the people who invented this crypto crapo, which is my name for it, and sometimes I call it crypto crapo, and sometimes I call it, crypto shit. And
Well done.
it's just ridiculous that anybody would buy this stuff. It is a. You
Sounds
can
like
think
Joe
of
Biden.
hardly nothing on earth that has done more good to the human race than currency.
Pause it.
Well, he says a little bit.
National currencies. They were absolutely required to turn man from a goddamn successful ape into modern successful humans in human civilization.
So nothing more important than national currencies. I want to be clear about this. And to just show you that the way, and again, I believe he's like 98, 99 years old. Like he's an old guy.
You can hear it in his voice. He sounds like he's walking hand in hand with
right. So listen, I'm not going to beat him up too much about the words he chooses to use or not or whatever, but I want you to focus on the fact that he says national currencies, and then he somehow links national currencies with bringing humanity basically from the caves to the stars in terms of civilization, all that kind of stuff.
because money equals fire, right?
First of all, that just tells you how pathetically ignorant he is about monetary policy, period. I want to be very clear about this, is that this is not, me punching up at some titan who knows a whole bunch and I'm just some dummy with 140 podcast subscribers on YouTube or whatever, and then I don't know anything and Charlie Munger knows everything, right? He has absolutely no idea where money came from, or the fact that things before national currencies were used as a medium of exchange. In Africa, they used to use salt as money before gold was money. In some cultures, they use seashells as money. There's all kinds of different mediums that cultures and societies have used throughout time that were used for a common medium of exchange in order to conduct economic transactions before the rise of national currencies. So first of all, tying national currencies to what made us dumb apes to be able to have civilization is completely ignorant of the development of monetary theory throughout human history. And B, it opens up an entire Pandora's box of talking about how terrible national currencies actually are.
Some currencies are traded in the bedroom. I don't know what he's on about, but it sounds like an old codger that's done it all the same. There's no way that you're going to invent an automobile that can drive itself. The best way to transport yourself is by horseback. Or if you need to transport your whole family, get a wagon. Never mind those engines that are going to shoot arrows at you halfway across. Never mind the fact that by the time you reach your destination, it was 20 years down the road and you're a completely different fucking group. Their best way to travel is horseback. Or fast forward it and put it in contemporary times for at least us. What is this internet? What's an email? I don't even understand.
Well,
it's never going to take off.
to use the internet example and bring a more modern example of quote unquote experts that don't know shit. There's that famous quote from Paul Krugman who said that, when you examine it in the long run, we will find that the internet will have no more impact on the global economy than the fax machine. This is a Nobel Prize winning economist, and that was his prediction about what the internet would become. Now, you could say, okay, he didn't have a crystal ball and he got that one wrong or whatever. But again, the meme in society
shit
is
wrong all the time.
Exactly. That's the meme that needs to be destroyed. And Munger, with his opinions on cryptocurrency, is really no different. So, before we move on to his next part of the statement, when he says that there's nothing more important than national currencies. Nothing at all, Charlie. Not the human innovation that human beings have been driven for. Yes, in some cases, currency, the prospects of making money from their invention is a motivator. But at the end of the day, the currency itself doesn't create the invention. The human mind does. Or what about the National Division of Labor, which eventually, when the global economy became integrated, became the International Division of Labor? The idea that human beings in one area of the world can specialize in one thing, while another group specializes in another thing. They create their two separate things very efficiently, and then they trade with each other, increasing the standard of living for both groups. The International Division of Labor is a massive boon to human progress that has nothing to do with national currencies. If anything, national currencies, and controlled from the top down by central banks and the politicians that control them, have done everything to hinder this voluntary cooperation between humanity that has pushed us from the cave to the stars. So again, Charlie, you are so far out of your depth, and it's not, David has a point, you're old, you're antiquated, you're stuck in your old ways. It's not just that. You're being intentionally ignorant, and then you're being abusive in your language to those people who know far, far more than you, because
But
you
also-
can't articulate their position.
But also, he's got a vested interest in it working the way that it works because that's how he knows how to work it.
Right.
He doesn't want it to change. He's got a vested interest in it staying the same way that it's always stayed because that makes him richer and you poorer, or just as rich. But he
Or
knows
not
how to-
catching
He
him.
doesn't want He doesn't want to learn a new thing. Which, as an old dude, I get it. I'm starting
Right.
to get that way too. I don't want to learn what vibes are. Okay, I'm past that. But anyway,
Right. All right. So the next part of Munger's statement, he's going to talk about, he's going to make a completely erroneous analogy, and then he's going to talk about why government is the greatest thing since sliced bread when it comes to crypto.
perfect. Blake,
Because it enabled all these convenient exchanges. So if somebody says, I'm going to create something that sort of replaces the national currency, it's like saying, I'm going to replace the national air. It's asinine. It isn't slightly stupid. It's massively stupid. And of course, it's very dangerous. And of course, the governments were totally wrong to permit it.
So the currency air analogy is, I almost didn't even write that down as one of my things to talk about because it's air is essential to live, Charlie. Currency is not essential to live. At the end of the day, we could, if we wanted to, we could go straight back to a barter economy. Now, would our standard of living drop significantly if we don't have a medium of exchange? Sure. But that doesn't mean that the medium of exchange has to be a national currency controlled by central banks who can just print it all willy-nilly and make the rest of us poor while they make people that hold appreciating assets like yourself richer and richer. There's no reason why that system has to persist, to David's point about exactly why you want that system to persist. So, this idea that, it's the same thing as national air, and it's very dangerous that governments have allowed it to persist, because don't we know that those stupid rubes shouldn't be able to exchange in whatever medium of currency that they want? How would this argument be any different, Charlie, right? If you're saying that national currencies are better than crypto, then inherently you would also say that within the spectrum of national currencies, there are some national currencies that are better than others. In terms of a monetary exchange, that is also true. However, you wouldn't call somebody in China stupid or in Japan stupid for exchanging in the yuan or the yen. You wouldn't call somebody in Russia stupid for exchanging the ruble. They just have a different national currency that they're using as a medium of exchange. Why can't there be a digital currency like crypto that people all over the world can use as a medium exchange that goes outside the parameters of what one nation state to control? What's inherently stupid about that, Charlie? Why is that more stupid than talking about somebody's dumb for exchanging the yen or the yuan as opposed to the dollar? It's not. It's just a different medium of exchange. And the fact that you can't wrap your stupid, antiquated mind around that for 5 seconds.
no, I think he can.
It's the problem. But
I
I
think he can. That's my point. Is that like all those things have value because at the end of the day, you could say we have the gold standard. You can say we have this, we have that. It's just all what the market values it at, which is exactly what's happening within the crypto community. If people value your Bitcoin or shitcoin or Dogecoin or whatever the fuck you've got, if they value it at this price, guess what? That's that price. And he's shitting on something that's a reflection of the thing that made him fucking wealthy. So, like all we agree upon in the stock market and the NYSE and the NASDAQ and the S&P, yada, yada, it's an agreed upon value throughout the world. What is crypto? It's an agreed upon value throughout the community within crypto, i.e. the world. It's the same thing, but what is he doing? If you went your entire life to accrue and amass an amount of wealth, he's sitting on a gold pile. He's sitting on a pile of gold. And there's a group of people going, hey, we don't think gold is worth that much anymore. We're shifting our thoughts to something else that's more valuable than gold and more sustainable than gold. And what is he doing from his mountaintop of gold? He's saying, no, gold is the best way to do it. Because if it isn't, then I spend my whole life tracking nothing. So there's a vested interest for him to say so. And he's saying it like an old man does. He doesn't no offense, he doesn't come up with a really, facts, figures, stats, this, that, and the other. He just goes, I've got wealth. You have to listen to him because I've got wealth and I've figured it out. But everybody that doesn't want to do what I did is stupid and you're dumb. And we'll never move forward anymore. Because if we do move forward, then all of a sudden he's not sitting on a mountain of gold. He's sitting on a mountain of shit that means nothing to anybody.
Yeah.
So
which is exactly what national currencies are. It's a mountain of shit. And why is it a mountain of shit? It's because a very small handful of human beings have monopoly control over its issue and supply and can take it away from other people through arbitrary means and at willy-nilly, like taxes and things like that, or take it away from them.
Or if you're a trucker in Canada.
Yeah, or take it away from them implicitly by just hitting the printing button on demand, right? That is a completely safe, non-dangerous, again, in Munger's words, crypto is dangerous, but giving 5 people sitting in the Federal Reserve and the politicians that are, backing them up and supporting them with the military's guns, giving that small group of individuals monopoly control over the issue and supply of money is not dangerous at all. There's no bad consequences that could possibly flow out of that. Versus a system where Bitcoin has written into its programming there are 21 million coins that will ever be made. As soon as all of them are mined, there will never be one more coin than 21 million. There's not a single soul on earth, no matter how strong the incentives, whether they have evil motives or benevolent motives, could ever change that. And we're taking the human element, the corruptible human element, out of the issue of money. How is that a bad thing? And if you can't even articulate that position, Charlie, as she quoted to you your own words in 2007, that you're not allowed to have an opinion on this unless you can articulate that position. The fact that you can't articulate that position and then just still call people stupid who can articulate it is the problem, Charlie. You are your own problem. You called yourself out in 2007 for being the problem, and you're just full on embracing it in 2023. By the way, before we let Charlie say some more, the guy's name that I couldn't remember that I can respect but hates crypto, Peter Schiff.
There you go.
Been on Joe Rogan a few times. You're probably familiar with him. He's a very big gold bug, says that it's stupid to buy Bitcoin, stupid to get engaged with cryptocurrencies. You should put your money in gold, et cetera, et cetera. But again, at least Peter Schiff can articulate the crypto position and isn't quite as out of touch as Charlie. So we're going to move on and let Charlie say a little bit more. We have a little bit more to say on what Charlie has to say before we wrap up this segment. So here's Charlie some more on how dangerous and terrible cryptocurrency is vis-a-vis national currencies.
Spooky scary.
And of course, I'm not proud of my country for allowing this crap, what do I call the crypto shit, it's
Crypto.
worthless, it's
Couldn't
no
remember
good,
crypto.
it's crazy, it'll do nothing but harm, it's antisocial to allow it. And the guy who made the correct decision on this is the Chinese leader. The Chinese leader took one look at crypto shit and he says, not in my China. And boom, oh well, there isn't any crypto shit in China. He's right and we're wrong.
So I really, this is probably my favorite one because
Do
there
we
is,
have to deconstruct this? I mean, he just kind of fell on his own sword there.
I mean, yeah, when you start
have to
lauding
point out?
communist totalitarian regimes as doing the right thing, you've pretty much given up the game. But I want to backtrack to the statement right before that to really open up that Pandora's box, because we could do an entire episode on just the word calling crypto antisocial. What is antisocial? Antisocial in a nutshell is basically saying I loathe everything that society is, and that's the good and the bad. It could be the the alienation that results from society of certain individuals. But it could also be the positive things of the cooperation that comes within society of individuals working together for a collective goal, stuff like that. And to be antisocial is to be against all of that. Well, what is more antisocial, Charlie, than a government that says, hey, human beings, you're going to trade precious, irreplaceable hours of your life for this little green piece of paper. You're going to forego beautiful memories with your children and forego opportunities to see the world and experience the splendor that is human life. You're going to forego that to get green pieces of paper because you understand that sacrifices have to be made to push humanity forward. Because it's not just about getting the green pieces of paper, it's the work that goes into that, which collectively raises the standard of living for all of us. So yeah, you're giving away a little bit of your life. You're not getting to do all the vacations and all the family time you want. But in exchange for that, you're raising all of our standards of living such that everybody has a little bit better life than they otherwise would have if everybody wasn't trading with each other using national currencies or otherwise. What's more antisocial than a group of individuals saying, all of those hours that you traded that you thought you were trading for a price, you thought you were trading for $1 that would hold a certain amount of value, that would allow you to buy a certain amount of groceries, to keep the electricity on your house, the roof over your head, to pay for the social services that keep you safe and comfortable and away from the elements and all of that kind of stuff. That social contract that you traded your life for to get access to that stuff, we're just going to change the terms of the contract overnight because we've decided to double the money supply. That is the most antisocial thing you could possibly think of. That destroys trust in a society. That takes people's irreplaceable hours of their life and whittles them down to whatever you arbitrarily decide because you decided to start printing more money. That's antisocial, Charlie. Not to mention the fact that those national currencies are what governments tax in. And those taxes go to supporting militaries to bomb poor kids halfway around the world. That's pretty fucking antisocial. It goes to pay for the lawyers that protect the politicians from lawsuits for everything from pedophilia to abuse of their power and everything in between.
Burning fucking chemicals in Palestine, fucking Ohio. 134, look it up.
You know, there is the laundry list of things that nations do with monopoly control of their national currencies to be antisocial and destroy human beings, lower the standard of living, it's innumerable. We couldn't possibly touch on all of the areas. And the one response to that, it's not a panacea, it's not a silver bullet, it's not going to fix everything, but one response of the people to actually take some of that power back and say, no, fuck you. You don't get monopoly control over how much my life is worth because I'm going to choose to transact in crypto, in Bitcoin, where I know that the value of the thing is dependent upon the people that use it, not on the politicians that print the money.
Because if we went to ChatGPT, we know how much our value of life is. It's a racial slur. Like, if it's as cheap as a racial slur, you know what? I don't like your currency. I'm going to go make mine. And it's fine that you trade that. And I'm going to go do this because my values don't match your values, clearly. And if there was an amount of blood on each bill that you got from Charlie in his breath or the air of the nation, you wouldn't keep it in your billfold. You wouldn't hold your iPhone because it'd be gushing blood 24/7. You wouldn't be doing any of this because so much of our currency is so steeped in the misery and suffering and death of other people that anybody that fights for this currency to stay alive is also fighting for it to be sustained by such means. That's how we've done this so far. So for people to start something that, by the way, are any human lives lost in the mining of crypto? No. Are any babies or mothers of said babies that are attached to their backs inhaling cobalt into their lungs
Not
at
directly.
any given moment?
But the argument is,
Whoa.
again, unlike Charlie, I can actually articulate the other side's argument.
Because we don't just call the other side idiots, we engage them.
Yeah, we articulate their position and then call them idiots if their position is actually idiotic. But
We give them a chance.
yeah.
Which is more than what Charlie did.
is the again, from the perspective of does it actually harm people, is they say that the reason why Bitcoin is bad and crypto is bad is because the amount of energy that it costs to mine crypto is more than some countries in the world, and that it is putting a massive strain on the energy grid, which of course requires burning more fossil fuels, which, and again, to your point about cobalt, if we were to transfer completely from fossil fuels to renewables, would require so much more cobalt digging to support the energy infrastructure to support.
But they're still writing legislature to make
like that.
I'm
just saying
EVs.
that's what they
They're
would
still
say.
pushing. They're still pushing to make EVs, which do the exact same thing.
I know, but what I'm saying is whether the energy
So they
grid,
just pick and choose which side they're on.
whether the energy grid, which is currently fossil fuel dominant, whether it stays in that position, in which case crypto mining burns a lot of fossil fuels, climate change, all that bullshit, or if the energy grid is switched over to totally green. Right. It's a fail-safe, as is all their arguments, is that it's constantly malleable.
They're never held to any of their arguments, but they'll hold you to the death.
Correct.
For your argument.
They will say, again, in one side of their mouth, they will say, crypto is responsible for climate change because it burns too much energy. And at the same time, they will say, let's support Ukraine and get the United States military involved, which is the largest individual polluter on the planet.
Right.
So, take these people seriously. That's, again, not what Charlie said in this.
We are very good with money. Give us more money and we'll get better with money.
And that's why articulating that portion of their position and pointing out how stupid it is, we can say people who still hold to that position are actually stupid. Not Charlie, who just saying they're an idiot and I can't even articulate why they're idiots.
Because I'm an old man and I eat my Jimmy Dean sausages one roll at a time.
Anyway.
That
should have been the main topic because, good God. Have we...
I know. We
do we have any more segments on him? Because
on Charlie?
On Charlie.
No. That's
Charlie.
No.
Oh, Charlie, you big babe.
No. Oh, and I guess this is an afterthought at this point. The Epstein moment on this is the creation of the Federal Reserve. For those of you who have not read it, I strongly encourage you to. The Creature from Jekyll Island, written by G. Edward Griffin, where he catalogs details how the Federal Reserve was created. In the early 20th century, a bunch of bankers, financiers, and business moguls went to Jekyll Island, I want to say Georgia, it's off the coast of Georgia, I believe, and in this secret meeting created what became the Federal Reserve System. And then a few years later, 1913, Woodrow Wilson signs it into law. So those group of people were the Charlie Mungers of their day. They were the rich, powerful, politically connected people who had benefited from the system as it was and decided to completely rig the system to always work in their benefit. And that same system is what has made Charlie Munger rich, which is why anything that attacks that system, which challenges the supremacy, validity, and moral righteousness of a national central currency, must be called stupid and ridden out of society. And we should probably emulate communist totalitarian regimes and making it illegal, because don't be cutting into my profits. You're a terrible person.
So basically what Dane is saying is they want it to continue the way that it has been going because it works for them and it doesn't work for you. So when you come up with something that works for you and not them, they're going to tell you that that thing doesn't work for you. And here's why: because I'm smarter than you, because I have more than you. Fair?
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome.
It's good summarization.
So with all of that being said, to the more cheery news of us being right. Can hold on. Oh, it tastes so good.
It does.
It's sweet, but round on the ends. It's wonderful. Anywho, we did blow up the Nordstream pipeline.
We did, guys.
We had every inkling, and then video clips, and then documentation, and then politicians from as far back as 2000 to now saying that we need to make sure that Europe depends on Western energy and not Eastern. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. If you go far enough east, you go west. If you go far enough west, you go east. I don't know where it stops. I don't know where it stops saying. But all I'm saying is that it just so many times with the 19 debate, so many times with like it feels good when you just adhere to logic and you wait. Just adhere to logic and wait. And then usually, more often than not, you'll be rewarded. And here's our fat, juicy reward that we're going to hand to ourselves because no one else is going to do it. We're going to hand to ourselves. Please, Dane.
And listen, we don't, especially about this topic, we do not want to be quote unquote right, because being right about this means increasing the chances of a global nuclear conflict, i.e. World War III, that could end all of us. And what we're talking about is the Nordstream pipeline. And if you'll recall, last year, I want to say August or September of 22, when it was blown up, which we were told at the time it was just an accident and they had no idea, according to the popular expert opinions, right, within the U.S. intelligence community, because we all know how trustworthy they are. They were telling us it was an accident. They had no idea. Oh my God, this is such a terrible thing. But we're not that upset about it if we're the, U.S. intelligence community, because it kind of actually works to our benefit. And isn't it just fancy how that works out? That the things that play right into our hands just happen coincidentally. And isn't that just great? Well, if you'll remember at the time, David and I risked conspiracy theorist status. We risked being lumped in with Alex Jones. According to most people, we didn't think it was a risk because, again, as David said, we just applied common sense, logic, and reason and then waited. And we didn't even have to wait a full year to be vindicated to prove to you once again that at WMD Podcast, it's tomorrow's news today. Because we pointed out at that time that President Biden, Undersecretary Victoria Nuland, current Secretary Anthony Blinken, many high-ranking U.S. politicians were on record before the Nord Stream pipeline blew up saying...
Rice, for Christ's sake, said it. Condoleezza Rice said it. And that's way back. That's in the way back, son.
Well, I mean, when it happened, she was like, him hawing around about it. But like Biden said specifically in no uncertain terms, when before Russia had even invaded Ukraine and it was just like, will they or won't they? Biden said, yeah, if they do, we will end Nord Stream. To which the reporter said, but you realize that ending Nord Stream doesn't just harm Russia. This is a jointly owned pipeline between Russia and Germany. And Germany is one of, if not the strongest NATO ally we have. And if this pipeline is sabotaged, that's not just an act of war against Russia. It could be seen as an act of war against our own ally. And to which that Biden just kind of sloughed off and said, yeah, if they invade, it will blow up.
You're saying more contemporary. I was saying that Condoleezza Rice said it when she was, what was she with the Bushes?
Well, she was Secretary of State back in the day.
Right.
But I mean,
that's when she was interviewed and said it on 60 Minutes, I believe, or like 2020 or whatever it was.
Yeah, I don't remember when the date was, but what I'm saying is the current people that were empowered to be able to actually act on their implicit threats, were being pretty obvious about it beforehand. And then when it happened, we're like, hey, this is kind of a good thing.
Ooh, how could that have happened? Putin must have blown it up himself.
Yeah, even though it blowing up.
I'm making too much money. God damn it, get rid of it.
Even though it blowing up harms Putin the absolute most and takes probably, if we're talking about a chessboard, the Nord Stream pipeline was Putin's queen. So the idea that he would voluntarily sacrifice it was just completely unbelievable from the start. And so David and I just applied simple logic and reason to this set of basic facts and said, yeah, it's highly likely the United States was involved in it, or did it?
No, we didn't.
Yeah.
Oh, what, you think that it's possible for us to blow up something that's 200 feet under the water? That's insane. Who's ever been down there except for everybody? No way.
Yeah.
We can't pull it off with this kind of equipment. Come on, guys.
Yeah.
We're a third world country, as we all know.
And the guy who vindicates us, an individual by the name of Seymour Hersh, and for those of you who maybe aren't familiar with American journalists and stuff like that, Seymour Hersh is not some Alex Jones sort of nutbag who we're just hanging our hats on to vindicate us. Seymour Hersh was the investigative journalist who discovered and disclosed to the American public the My Lai massacre in the Vietnam War. He was involved in the reporting on the Watergate scandal. He was involved in breaking the information about the torturing of detainees at Abu Ghraib during Iraq War II. Seymour Hersh has a long, extensive history as an investigative journalist of writing highly controversial articles, breaking news from sources, that he doesn't disclose, but that are ultimately vindicated and that he was correct about when he writes the article. So Seymour Hersh is not some fly-by-night slappy like your gracious co-host here, who is just talking out his ass. When Seymour Hersh writes an article and says, I have sources that confirm X, Y, or Z, you should probably pay attention. CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, ABC, CBS, all of the mainstream sources should probably be talking about whatever it is that Seymour Hersh is writing about, and politicians and decision makers should be made to answer some questions that he raises. Well, February 8th, 2023, just a few months after the Nord Stream pipeline blew up, Seymour Hersh wrote an article over on his Substack, which will be included in the show notes page and on the links under these videos, where he basically, and I'm going to give you the very, very Cliff Notes version. Operating from bases in Norway, the United States, a couple months before the pipelines ever blew up, ran a NATO exercise with some of its allies in the ocean where the Nord Stream pipeline runs. And as a part of that NATO exercise, I don't know if it was SEAL teams, but some special operation forces from the United States swam down and put C4 charges on the Nord Stream pipeline. And then a few months later, the pipeline blows up. They were remote detonated, and that's what caused the explosions on the Nord Stream pipeline. Seymour Hersh details exactly this timeline of how this happened, how the United States worked with Norway to do it, et cetera, et cetera. And regardless of whether you think that what Seymour Hersh has to say is true or not or whatever, questions should be flowing to the politicians and decision makers based on what Seymour Hersh had to say. Again, given his extensive career of being a multi-time corroborated investigative journalist. Now, David and I didn't have the details on how all of this played out. Seymour Hersh's article does. I encourage you to read it. But that's basically the cliff notes of what he says of how it was pulled off. And the individuals that gave him this information were individuals in the United States military that were involved in the planning and conducting of this operation. So, yeah.
So it's real news.
Yeah.
That's what used to be real news.
Yeah. This is what journalists used to do.
They used to actually tell the truth. It wasn't the third wing or the fourth wing of the goddamn government. Speaking of which, I know we mentioned it on 134, which you should go check out as well. How do they find that, Dane?
WWIII.com/134.
It's like I press a button and it just happens. I like to have that power. Anyway, go check it out because they don't cover. We mentioned in that episode that they aren't covering the derailment. They aren't covering this. They aren't covering Hunter's laptop. They aren't covering Twitter files. They aren't covering this. They aren't covering that. All they're doing is telling you how you should feel about things. How you should feel about Elon Musk. He's a crazy kook. When not 2 months ago, he was the best person that's ever lived because he invented pretty much electronical vehicles. And he was on their side. Again, like these people have no bounds. This is what, if Watergate happened today, Don Lemon would be talking about the U.S. women's national team securing a place in the next FIFA Women's World Cup. Like, it's not. I guess that's the problem nowadays. It's like you aren't being fed any information, but we still act like we know things. Like there's no one sticking their neck out like they did. And what's his face? The guy that wrote the article,
Hersh.
I wanted to say Seymour, but I know you so bad.
I saw you chuckling off camera.
I did. And then he goes balls deeper. He said he goes nuts over. I was like, I kept it together, and I want a trophy for that. I should.
That is not nutso.
He's not nutso. I was like, Seymour Butts is nutso. Oh my God. Anyway, moving on, champ. It didn't take a lot. Like in the educational corner of this podcast, how we'll teach you our tricks to predicting the future. You just look at what they're saying, take off all the, like, this is going to be the death of this, or this is the flamboyant shit. Just look at what happened. The pipeline blew up. It hurts countries right before winter. What countries does it hurt? Germany. We could probably smooth it over with them. They're an ally. And who does it hurt worst? The country that we are most in disagreement with at the current moment. And we had nothing to do with it. It just so happened to pop at just the right time for this country to squeeze another country that it's its rival by the balls and real hard. And you don't think that we did it? And all that our administration said is, sometimes things blow up, I don't know. They should have done their due diligence and made sure the safety regulations were up to par. C-134 on WMD podcast for regulations and how well this government sees its own regulations on safety precautions. So again, it didn't take a stone's throw of belief to believe that we might have done this. And there was always that timber over it. Even when they would ask him questions like, did the U.S. have that? And he's like, well, no, sometimes they just give some cockamamie answer. It's like, sometimes pipes burst. I don't know, shit.
Yeah.
It's like,
and when we first talked about this, like right when it happened back in 2022, is we put it in the Epstein segment. And the reason why I remember that is because the Epstein moment on this was the example from World War I, where the very first thing after Britain declared war on Germany was they went to the Atlantic telegraph wire between Germany and the United States, and they cut the wire. Why? Because they wanted monopoly control over the narrative of what was going on in World War I to be able to propagandize the American public and get America to come in on the side of Britain and its allies against Germany. And that was the Epstein moment that we tied to why the United States would have the incentive to do this in this context, is because the reason why Nordstream, and we said it at the time, we'll just reiterate it here, the reason why I called it Russia's or Putin's queen on the chessboard is because the pressure that is being put on Russia, both in terms of sanctions and everything else and military equipment flowing into Ukraine and stuff like that, is not the United States alone. The United States is the primary supplier of it, but it's in conjunction with its NATO allies. But as we know, winters in Northern Europe are very, very cold, and having the energy to be able to keep the houses warm and to keep the people happy, and therefore keep them not paying attention to what the governments are doing to the government of Russia, it's imperative that cheap energy keep flowing into Europe so that, the populations of the NATO allies are kept content, primarily Germany. And so what the United States saw the Nord Stream pipelines as is Putin's kind of ace up his sleeve to be able to say, all right, Germany, you want to apply some pressure on us? You want to get involved in our situation over here in Ukraine? We're just going to turn off the natural gas to you. And that is Putin's bargaining chip to make sure that the Northern European NATO allies that are getting cheap Russian natural gas via the Nord Stream pipelines are kept at bay. But if you blow up the pipeline, then Putin no longer has that bargaining chip,
right.
Which is why the pipeline was critical to Putin and Russia and the United States and every incentive to blow it up.
And we were told,
and they're risking nuclear war to take that chip away.
And we
from
were
Russia.
told the entire time that just happened naturally. They're pushing for nuclear war with this maneuver. It could potentially it could potentially lead to nuclear war. It could potentially lead to, like you just said, World War III. And going back to everything that we've ever said about every government, accountability. Where was it? They didn't even own up to the thing that they did. How the fuck can they be held accountable for nuclear war? It'd be, well, we should have seen it coming. It's like, shoulda, woulda, coulda. How many times does the government get a shoulda, woulda, coulda? Get a mulligan? Get a, well, I accidentally let, a lot of people die that didn't have to. Because sometimes they say words that are no words.
They're they're literally the only institution in society that's incentivized to fuck up. Because when they do, the argument is always, well, if you gave us more power, if you gave us more money, that fuck up wouldn't have happened. So give us more.
I mean, it's
not tremendously complex. And this is the reason why I blew up a couple episodes ago on the guy who was talking, about the Mr. B segment about, government should be doing this. This is not rocket science stuff here. Us being able to call this shot right when it happened and then just so happened to be vindicated by Hersh a few months later, you don't have to be particularly bright to figure this stuff out. You just have to look at human beings as they are and look at the incentives that are lined up on each side and just play a probabilities game. What's more likely? Is it more likely that Russia did it to themselves?
Occam's razor.
Is it more likely that the United States did it to get a leg up and take a major, probably the biggest bargaining chip away from Russia?
That was their thing.
Of course it does.
That wasn't the thing, though. They said that Putin's so crazy, he probably blew it up himself. Like,
no, yeah, they definitely. That
was the line that they were saying. It's like that. Even if you are the Mad King, to go back to Game of Thrones, you're not that mad. Like, you're never gonna chop your dick off and throw it at a crowd. Mad, like that's literally what
even if you're crazy, you still have self-interest,
right? Like, Jesus Christ. And then people are, Putin's losing it. Yep. It's like, these are the same people that would have drank the Kool-Aid at fucking Jonestown. These are the same people that were like, no, you know what? This guy has to fuck my wife because it's God's will.
Yeah.
I don't want to look at my life any further than that.
And just like, just to kind of piggyback to kind of finish this out is Dave and I always tell you about, look at what these people get outraged over versus what they don't. Kind of in that same vein, look at what stories that the mainstream media chooses to report on versus the ones they don't, right? When the pipeline initially blew up and they wanted to try to push the narrative that Russia did it, it was all over every media source. It was Nordstream blew up. Oh my God, Russia. When they found out that that was a losing battle and you had to suspend all credulity to believe that bullshit and the American public wasn't buying it, then they just dropped that story entirely, didn't talk about it anymore. And then a few months goes by, Hersh breaks this story, and there's not a word of it on mainstream media. Why? Because A, it makes them look bad because with all their resources and money, they didn't dig in and figure out what one guy could. And B, they don't want to ask the follow-up questions because they've been instructed by the ones that control them not to ask the questions. You're not going to see anybody asking Victoria Nuland or Anthony Blinken or Sullivan or Jake Sullivan or Joe Biden. You're not going to see anybody asking them any follow-up questions about this stuff because they don't want to know. They're not paid to know. They're paid to not know. They're paid to stick their heads in the sand. And you and I are just along for the ride because if these fucking morons pop off World War III, there ain't a whole wider...
They're going to be fighting it. They're going to be fighting it themselves, right?
There's not a whole wider deep enough for us to be digging in. Forget fighting it, even if you don't have to go fight it. And you're just living in your shack out in the middle of Nowheresville, America, hoping to just wait for the whole thing to blow over. A nuke drops in close enough proximity to you, you ain't much longer for this world.
Nukes drop enough, this world isn't going to be so anymore.
If you're not going to hold these people's feet, and by these people, I mean the faux journalists who claim that they deserve respect and that you're terrible if you castigate the mainstream media. I mean, this is the most important thing in
Human civilization as we know it.
yes, this is the continued existence of life on this planet
Right.
at stake here. And so to let these people just play games with that is, I don't know. I get worked up about a lot of stuff, but this one really takes the cake. I am shocked that there is not massive, violent, global outrage over this at the government's complicity. The first of all, the governments that perpetrated it, and then the complicity of their allies to not say, bro, you went too far. This is fucked up. You don't do this. You don't do this. But here we are. You got to rely on
Again, the accountability comes down to
Know
us.
Nothing podcast.
You have to be the
Give you the facts.
Australian 121st political.
We got to
podcast.
crack the top 100.
I'd hope so. But all I'm saying is that if we don't hold them accountable for this, or if the media that we trust so dearly and intrinsically, if that doesn't hold it, if this isn't, put it this way, if this isn't evidence enough that you can't trust the media that you're getting from CNN, Fox News, CNNBC, MSNBC, whatever the fuck, whatever you choose to watch, if this isn't evidence that they don't want you to know the things that you should, then we obviously you're not tuning into this podcast. And if you have, then don't watch that shit anymore. It's the basic thing, because you're not getting educated, you're getting indoctrinated. That's straight what it is. They're not telling you anything. And again, if you think that you're a conservative and you watch Fox News and you get Fair and Balanced, you get all, they didn't cover it either. They're not covering this shit either. Despite how it makes their foe, the Biden administration, look. So again, I don't know anything else to say other than, Dane, do you have any final thoughts?
Well, a nice little cherry on top of this whole thing is, at the time, it's now been eclipsed by the Ohio train derailment, but at the time, this was one of the largest ecological disasters in human history. The amount of, I want to say, methane maybe it was, but anyway, whatever. The amount of gas that was released from this into the atmosphere,
Ocean and atmosphere.
eclipsed the total emissions of several countries.
By the way, what is that
So-
government that isn't talking about this, that totally did it? What is it always talking about? Emissions? Emissions.
Yeah.
They're super concerned with emissions. But
You
they just
can't
do
have a
it
cheeseburger because cows fart, but they'll blow up a pipeline because reasons.
because we had to. Don't you understand, Stephen?
And yet I haven't seen any press conferences at all of Greta Thunberg saying, "How dare you?"
Why would you blow up the pipeline? A day. I sailed here from Norway. Anyway, Dane, with this wonderful peach of an episode, cherry topped, where can they find it again? And I'm going to suppress my psychoticism.
WNDpodcast.com/135 is where you can find it. You can also get the audio only at any podcast catcher. Just search Weapons of Meme Destruction. You can get the video on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey. You can link up with us on our non-podcast social media platforms, but still podcast-related content. Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. You can get into the private members-only Facebook page for $5 a month. Go to the website to figure out how to do that. Support our work. You can click the link below, the merchandise link to buy merch from us. That will also help the show. You can link up with us on Float, Tribal, and I think I got all the social medias. And then you can also choose to support us with a donation. You can simply just tell your friends and family about us. That's help getting the word out. We are seeing sustained growth across all platforms, so we appreciate your efforts in that direction. We thank you. And with that being said, we hope that to grow this sane space, if for no other reason than to provide a larger microphone, a bigger platform to news articles like this, actually critical, important information that the American people and people around the world need to know in order to hold their governments accountable before we all wind up in some apocalyptic hellscape. So, that's no small task on our end that we're trying to achieve, but we thank you for helping us get there as soon as possible.
Not to give us too much of a grandiose position. But anyway, yes, follow all those things. And if nothing else, spark a conversation amongst yourselves. But as always, our little memes, stay safe, but more importantly, stay free.